Dr. Wonkite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. Miseducation and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. We are live, and we are here at lifestyleradio.net, as well as at 420radio.ca. Today, I'm joined by my joint host, Alicia Yashcheshen, and she has invited a guest that has been helping patients for, I'm going to say, decades, and has beaten the government. But before we bring him in, it's time for Alicia and I to talk a little bit of news. Hi, Alicia. How you doing?
Hey, Al. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm not doing too bad. Not too bad at all. Considering, we've had a winter of minus 40 to all the way up to plus 10.
I know, right? It's melting here. I love it.
Yeah. It's nice when it melts away and it starts getting warm, but, so there's some winter activities that we just, you can't do without the snow, right?
Yeah, it's one of those inevitable things, I guess. But I'll appreciate the warm while it's here.
Yes. Yeah, I know what you mean. I do as well. Okay, Alicia, in news, I don't know whether you saw the announcement today or not on the TV or in the news about the government investing $1.4 million into research.
That's awesome. I think that that's long overdue. I think that we're really ignorant when it comes to cannabis, and kudos to them. I think that's really good. I'd like to see more of that.
The money's going to be split amongst 14 different projects.
Okay,
and none of those projects include research for cannabis benefits. It's all about, what is it? It's the finding more negatives, basically, is what they're looking for. Yeah.
So when will the reefer madness stop then, right? Like, we should be looking for the benefits and the positive aspects, as they are in Colorado, and they're finding some really good things. So, yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yes, it is. Let's see. They believe this information will help them with public education so that, for example, they could be able to enable young people to know the risks of driving while impaired with cannabis. So that's right
awesome.
there.
But do they know the risks of alcohol? Well, clearly not. So it's like, why don't you focus on prevention of things that actually prevent alcohol car accidents instead of creating another witch hunt after cannabis, which, has proven that there is a safety risk, yes, but oftentimes within the cannabis community and people who use cannabis, they know when not to drive because cannabis doesn't induce the ego behaviors like alcohol does. And so you show me an overzealous cannabis user who's just racing down the road, endangering the lives of everyone else around them and themselves. It's not going to happen unless they're on something else as well, right?
The research will be funded with the money to look into the wide range of issues, including the potential effects of cannabis use on drivers, as well as the health of pregnant women and their children. It will also support the effects of cannabis on adolescent mental health and safety in the workplace.
Well, that's great, but where are the studies that are looking at the effects of pharmaceuticals on all of these areas? Because I would love to know the actual harm that those are creating within society.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that'll be interesting to see what the results are going to be like. So, well, let's see what else they're looking into over here in Ontario. Let's see. Have you heard the latest on the vapor lounges? You're all the way over in Saskatchewan.
I did, and I really applaud Ontario for doing that. You know what we're doing over here in Saskatchewan? You have to be 21 to possess cannabis lawfully for recreational purposes, I guess. And they're raiding dispensaries. They've given them notice if they don't close, they're going to raid.
Yeah. Well, this is the lounges itself. They're talking about regulating and licenses the lounges in Ontario, which would be great for patients who travel. You know, if they're going to make it so public use is against the law, so you can't use it out in the public, just like you can't drink publicly, and you can't say you live in a condo and you're not allowed to use it in your condo because it's against the rules of the condo corporation. You basically don't have anywhere to use it unless you go over to some friend's place. So vapor lounges allow people to, access, cannabis, allow them to go to places. Medical people, for example, who are driving to Toronto for appointments at clinics, cancer clinics and stuff like that. It allows them a place to go where they can medicate, instead of forcing them out in the back alleys.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now I see here, and I just see here that the mayor of Ottawa doesn't want any vapor lounges in the city.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. But how many bars are in that city that cost society millions of dollars in all kinds of harms because of alcohol? And well, I guess it's just that thing that old saying, cannabis will prove itself, and it already has. Many years of prohibition still can't keep cannabis down. So
no, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They say here that there isn't enough studies on secondhand cannabis vapor.
What about tobacco vapors selling left and right that are completely lawful that you see kids going into with their parents? I was so disgusted when I saw that.
But they don't have
harmful. You know what I mean? They're very much harmful.
Oh, and they don't have e-juice vapor lounges though. Right.
Well, that's fine, but the fact that they're even selling that, I saw some research that suggests that those vapes and the what's in them create some type of popcorn lung disorder. I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen something about that. Yeah.
But I believe it because seriously, if you read the ingredients on what is in those vapes, that's atrocious. You shouldn't be ingesting that, right? But that's completely legal.
Yeah, actually, there's been some changes in our law. I'm not up to date on the e-juice laws, but there has been some changes within this new law that's coming into effect here in Ontario. And I'm not sure what all they are. I'm looking over Wayne. Oh, Wayne's got this whole stack of paper in front of him. He says, "Here they are." Yeah, there's a bunch of new stuff on its way. So. But that's unfortunate. As far as the vapor lounges in Ottawa, let's just hope the mayor of Ottawa changes their mind because there's lots of people in Ottawa that can use a vapor lounge.
Oh, for sure.
Yes. Well, what do you think? We move on to our guest, wrap up our news?
Oh, yes.
Yes, because I know you've got lots of questions. Right? Okay. Well, it's time to welcome our guest to the show, who I said has been helping patients for decades and has beaten the government. So we'd like to welcome Owen Smith to the Pace Radio Show. Hello, Owen. How are you?
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I'm very well. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Gee, it's been a while, eh? Been a while. Couple years, I think.
That's right.
Yes.
So glad that you've kept it going, that you guys are working together on this.
Yeah, we're still plugging away here. It's just been going for almost 4.5 years.
I really enjoy it. I'm with you, Al. So
yeah, well, thank you. I enjoyed my time when you were with the program as well. You were with us for 2 years.
Yeah, and got to interview lots of advocates from across the country through this medium. So that was really valuable.
It is. It helps spread the words, gives advocates a voice, and that's what we're here to do. So,
lots has been changing in the world.
There sure has been. We'll get into that as we go along through the show here. Not the day, the show. We're only an hour and a half. We're not all day. Okay, Alicia, I'm gonna let you loose on Owen, and as always, I'll join in and probably bring up some memories as we go along.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay, so Owen, the first thing that I usually like to ask my guest is what brought you to cannabis? What was your first experience with cannabis, and how did it come into your life?
Well, I say my first experience, ever, with cannabis was through my brother, and I suppose maybe I was about 15 or 16, and he showed me this technique we call buckets, and that's otherwise known as a gravity bong, just a bucket of water with a half a 2 liter and a little tin foil on the cap, a way of taking large lungful of smoke. And so I was introduced through that bizarre method of smoking, and just enjoying some video games with my brother. That was how I first met or had a cannabis experience.
And then, so you obviously appreciated the effects of the way in which cannabis made you feel?
Oh, it was something new, absolutely, for me. And it's a unique experience that continues to unfold, showing you parts of yourself and how you interact with the world. It's been a reflective tool for me, and I credit it with helping to guide me on a path that is both enjoyable for me and that helps to serve other people in a nice way.
Awesome. And so you are involved medicinally. And so what took you to that point? Like, you were involved in some baking, is that correct? Or a bakery?
That's correct.
Tell me about that.
Well, I learned, like most folk, I think I didn't know much about medicinal cannabis until I came across Ted Smith, a good friend of mine.
No relation?
No relation. He ran one of the only cannabis dispensaries in Victoria at that time, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club. It's still open, just got rezoning approval. It's been around for about 23 years, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's as Ted Smith, as a pioneer in the cannabis industry, as well as running this shop, he would go out every week and do public talks at the college, the university in downtown. And that's how I first learned cannabis had medicinal effects especially for cancer. When my younger sister was diagnosed with cancer, I recalled these benefits and suggested it to my family, as my sisters had a very aggressive form of skin cancer that the doctors prescribed a heavy regime of drugs and chemotherapy in order to try to stop, as well as surgeries, which left her with scarring and pain. And while they tried their hardest, the treatments didn't work. They weren't effective, and the doctors essentially gave her time. How much time you have? I think about a few months or so. They might have said it. And she, with my family's blessing at that point, tried cannabis, and the family at that point was willing to try anything, and I brought them to the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club, and my sister got cannabis from there, and edible forms of it, and skin creams, and she used each, and especially the smoke forms were very effective to combat the nausea and the pain, and it given her a lot of her regular functions back, like sleeping and being able to have a meal, keep the meal down, and not being so psychoactively impaired by the opiates that you can't carry a conversation. So it was a miraculous turnaround. My family got to witness it, and I got to witness my family witnessing it. And we came from England in 1994, so we're not. We haven't come from the cannabis culture necessarily. We've just come into it and are being introduced in this dramatic way to the transformational effects that it can have, and the benefits that are priceless, that give you time with somebody who you dearly love before they pass away, which was what did happen with my sister, and she passed away 1 year after being diagnosed, and so that was my introduction to the medical aspects, and it was kind of a crash course, you might say. Then a year or so later, I was asked by Ted Smith to join the VCBC as their head baker, and so I did, and I began learning about how to make all of their edible products and how to make oils and how to process the herb in ways to make different kinds of oils of different strengths, and working with Ted and the VCBC, I began to apply some of my other skills, which are graphic design and writing, and we made a recipe book that you can still find online. It's still up there. It's called the CBCOC official cannabis recipe book. You can Google
neat.
that. Yeah. So that was my introduction, and then I was arrested while I was baking. I was back in 2009. Yes.
And so was that a raid then, or like how did that play out?
I think it's just the risks inherent in making cannabis edibles in a place where other people could smell that. Naturally, making butter, melting butter, cooking it, there's an odor that drifts. And while it was a cold December day, and the filter that we had on the air filter was about done, and the incense had also run out. So there was a number of factors which led to the smell being a bit more. And the other fact of the matter was that I was playing music loudly, and somebody did complain about the music being too loud. And while I was a DJ at the time, it being 3:00 in the afternoon, I had let the volume drift higher again than it perhaps should have been in such an apartment building. So the police did come, and they arrested.
It's the middle of the afternoon. Most people are at work.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's.
Sometimes you just need a little bit of energetic music to keep you baking all day, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Got to make 600 cookies and 1,000 caps and dozens of bags of lozenges.
And you can't expect a guy to sit there in total silence and produce all this medicine for patients.
That is my feeling as well.
Yeah.
So I was arrested and charged with trafficking THC, and the long process of challenging those charges began from there, and didn't finish until 2015, when we were ultimately victorious at the highest possible level of the legal proceedings.
So go back to the bus. Did they take all of your cookies and your caps and everything when they arrested you?
Indeed. Yeah, I still have cookies in the oven while they were arresting me. And at one point, the oven timer went off, and so I had to flip them. And I did that, and then cooked them completely, And then they did take everything, as well as oils which didn't have cannabis in them, because we infused olive oil with other herbs, such as arnica, St. John's wort, and the like. And then we combine those with cannabis in massage oil blends to give them specific effects, such as to help circulation or reduce swelling, as each of these herbs also has a complementary medicinal effects. So, but they took all those as well, and they assessed it all. They had to destroy it, they said. They couldn't return anything. They assessed it in the hundreds of thousands of dollars realm, which was far and beyond what it was actually worth. In part because they misidentified it in the process, and we clarified that fact at the very beginning of the trial, because they thought, this is honey oil that you're cooking up, hash oil, something like Rick Simpson oil that would be quite strong, something that people would consider like a dab of a concentrated extract. Well, I was making diluted oils using vegetable oil. They are much weaker, and if as they put street value prices on these things, there really is no street value for these vegetable oil products. As people on the street, they just aren't selling them.
Yeah,
people aren't looking for that. It's not a valuable thing.
No.
So, but they did take it all. They did destroy it all. There was one note that I appreciate from that, and I had a picture, because they had to take a picture when it happened. But while they were carrying one of these jars of infused vegetable oil into the evidence room, it slipped out of one of their hands and cracked and spilled all over the evidence room floor. And we infuse our oils with liquid lecithin. And if you ever worked with liquid lecithin, it is incredibly sticky, and it is really, really hard to clean. And these oils are very, very smelly too. So I imagine that that evening, just after I was let go, that about the entire police station, Victoria Police Station, smelled like cannabis.
Yay.
That's awesome.
Now, Owen, your case, and Alicia mentioned, the medical end of it there at the beginning of the show, but you actually weren't a medical patient going through all this trial. You were a regular citizen who was fighting this, and in the end, it became huge benefits for the medical patients.
Yeah, that's right. I was, as a citizen, it's my duty to, if I see another citizen suffering, and then there's a way in which I can help them, then it is my civil duty to do that, and that's protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And so, just as any person, if you see another human being who is suffering, then you really do, even if it's illegal, what you need to do to help them, that you really do have a right to that. And as we found out in my case, that can, in fact, change the law altogether, and that activity will become legal.
There you go. That's good stuff. Go ahead.
Oh, and so they charged you with the trafficking. Sorry, let's go back there. And then, so what part of the law did your case change?
Well, the way they had been charging people under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act was a little bit arbitrary, and the division of cannabis in that act, it was arbitrary. That's what the way they lay it out is that you have cannabis divided into separate parts. Dried cannabis is separate from cannabis resin, is separate from THC, is CBD, CBN. And while those things can be separate, what we really have is all of them, all in one. And while I was charged with trafficking THC, that charge was really arbitrary, because what I was really doing was trafficking cannabis with cannabis resin. And so we just attacked their basis for creating those distinctions in the law, the botanical distinctions, that they really need not be there in the first place, as what we ended up spelling out for them was that the cannabis plant is covered in, the dried cannabis is covered in the cannabis resin, which is filled with the THC and the CBD and the CBN. And it's a generally arbitrary process to make or create anything from a dried cannabis that is an extract, that is a resin that contains the THC and the CBD and the CBN. So it sounds a little complicated, because basically what they were doing was just charging people in a way that was unscientific and was not clear when you looked at the plant botanically. What the law in medical sense said was that you could only have the dried stuff. You couldn't have any of the other classifications that they'd separated, the resins, the THCs and stuff. But the truth was you had them anyway. And so we really just had to let them know just how thin that distinction was, just how illusory it was, how it really didn't make any sense. Yeah, so thus we attacked the CDSA and the MMAR, the MMPR, which somewhat relies on the CDSA. Yeah, and along the way we brought in scientists to challenge the Health Canada's chief science officer, and our scientist, who had a lot of experience with cannabis, was able to establish a great deal of facts that were in the judge's final ruling, while Health Canada's chief science officer was thoroughly, I'd say, humiliated in his testimony, and had his evidence retracted based on the bias that Health Canada apparently has in informing his opinion. Well, it's a stuff I've written about on the Cannabis Digest in some details, and it was really work from Kirk Tusaw, a bit of magic in the questioning that helped to unravel or unveil Health Canada's science officer from his truly lack of knowledge about cannabis. And so when we look at the case and how we won and how it would have an impact moving forward, we can look at some of these scientific details and what they have established that's essentially clarified what people should be allowed to access in terms of what cannabis is. In the future, for legalized cannabis, they shouldn't be able to make the same arbitrary distinctions to restrict people from accessing other forms of cannabis edibles and resins, because we really established that there's no logical, rational distinction that should be made. If you're going to legalize cannabis, then you're legalizing it all.
I'm going to jump in here, Owen, so we can go for a break. I want to continue this conversation when we get back, because I got a question for you.
All right.
In regards to that, and I don't want to ask you because then we'll just keep going and going and we'll get a break in. So, all right. As we go for break, you guys are going to hear some music from the Hicks. As I said, I usually try to connect the songs to our guests, and that's where Owen is. He's in BC, so we got to listen to some good old BC Smoke by the Hicks. And when we get back, Alicia and I will continue our conversation with our guest, Owen Smith. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show. We are here at lifestyleradio.net.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
All right, boys. Now, don't forget, I'm the director. Billy, grab your guitar. Gabby, grab your guitar. All right, boys, let's do it. Hey, hi up there, it's in the air. It's BC, but tonight the pressure blows.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
A big thank you to our listeners. Because of you, you're listening to the award-winning Pace Radio Show here on Lifestyle Radio.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet, www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
CTCP now operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CTCP.
Man, have you been to Cannadays yet? Cannadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Cannadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Cannadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Cannadays. Have your say without saying a word. Cannadays.ca.
The pressure blows and the embers glow if they give the bong a light. The buds they grind, I do find this shit's really insane. The crowd it roars, cause Bobby scores some BC Mary Jane. Oh, the good old BC smoke is the best smoke you can toke. And the best smoke you can choke is the good old BC smoke. Hey, second verse.
Welcome back. We are the Pace Radio Show, and as always, we are live here at lifestyleradio.net. I should let you know, catch the Reefer Reporters with Kim Cooper and myself as we talk and discuss the previous week's cannabis news. You can catch this new and weekly podcast every Monday around 4:20 p.m. and throughout the week here at Lifestyle Radio. Today on the program, we have our guest, Owen Smith, as well as joint host Alicia Yashcheshen. Okay, you two, before the break, we were talking about Owen's court case, and Owen, you mentioned something about how the laws now, they can't stop the access to the edibles and stuff like that, correct?
That would be my understanding of the facts that we established.
So what I was wondering was, at one point, the federal government was saying that, we're going to legalize cannabis and we're going to look at legalizing, the edibles and stuff like that, future, down the road, just sort of pushing it off to the side. And then all of a sudden it just seemed like they started talking about it again, and they said that they would have this out within a year's time or in about a year's time. Do you think that your case had any bearing on that type of decision?
I think all of the court cases over the last 10, 15 years kind of thing have had an impact on this program and how it's all laying out. I think the MMPR was somewhat a result of many of the growers challenging such the limitations of the earlier systems that didn't allow for collective growing or anything like that.
Yeah,
I definitely think that the government at least has to have the foresight to understand the constitutionalities that have been established on such high levels as the Supreme Court of Canada. It's not likely that that's ever going to be challenged and overturned, and so they're really facing unenforceable law if they keep that arbitrary restriction, like I said, to allow people just to have dried buds and such, but not all the rest.
Good to know. This, how much it's reached out. Like your court case has reached out and made so many changes. So, all right, Alicia.
Yes.
Over to you. You got a question?
I do. So, in terms of the baking process, what is the most medicinal way to make edibles, in your opinion?
Well, I think when we want to perfect the process of creating a medicinal edible, you have to think about it from the very, very beginning. And of course, that includes the genetics and targeting your genetics in such a way to produce the cannabinoid content that you're looking for, and perhaps the terpenes, also the specific terpene blends that you're looking for. But that cannabis has got to be grown in clean soil. It has to be grown very well, flushed very well, and then cured very well. And then the resin on the outside of the cannabis needs to be harvested from the dried cannabis in a way which reduces and minimizes, perhaps even eliminates, all of the dried plant material that the resin is clinging on to. So those processes can be delicate, as shaking over screens, or involve spinning machines. There are a number of ways that people are extracting the resin from the cannabis, including live resin, where people will freeze the plants, and when the resin is cold, it's more brittle and it's easier to snap those little resin heads off and gather them all up. But there are processes beyond that still, where you remove waxes, plant waxes that are part of the trichome structure, that are the part you consider the shell of the trichome that's holding the resin on the inside. Well, that needs to be removed, and there's processes to do that. And what you end up getting down to is either a product like a shatter or a concrete sort of resin that's hard and is a combination of cannabinoids and terpenes. Or you can have a distillate, which is just the cannabinoids, and it'll be a clear liquid with no flavor, no color. And those you can then measure and proportion out and distribute into a medium, such as a coconut oil or another kind of vegetable oil, that then you could make into an edible delicacy of a variety of kinds. And doing it that way, reducing all of the different steps, reducing all of the contaminations which you that are part naturally of the plant, and just taking these unique compounds which have the medicinal effects that cannabis provides, that you end up being able to target more specifically your edible to a person's individual needs, and giving them exactly what they are looking for in a very similar product each time. So yeah, that's basically basic rundown.
Awesome. And so in terms of like cannabis and growing cannabis, you advocate for like organic, clean as possible, I would suspect.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of techniques that people are developing. I recently spoke with a grower in the Kootenays who's got some super soils and compost teas and a variety of products that can help those who are maybe starting to think about growing their own cannabis plants when it is legal, to get right in there and to do it in a way which is going to produce the cleanest and tastiest of quality cannabis plants.
Awesome. And so in terms of your charges, you said that it took from, 2009 till about 2015 when it was all said and done?
That's correct. The legal process is a slow one, very methodical. We went to one judge in 2012 for 4 weeks where we laid out all of our arguments, and that's where we got our initial constitutional victory. And then we had to have a separate trial that was going to address my personal involvement, me not being a medical patient. But right before that, the Crown decided to call no evidence, which is just a process of them kind of dropping the charges and then appealing the initial ruling, constitutional ruling. And then so we went to 3 judges in Vancouver. 2 out of 3 judges there agreed with us. 1 did not. But 2-1 is a victory for us. But the way that it works is that the one judge, his dissent, grants the federal government an automatic right to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. If it was 3-0, then it might have ended there. But being 2-1, we went to the 9 judges in Ottawa, and that was 2015. And that was about a 2-hour affair.
That was great.
You can see it on in the records because it's all televised on CPAC. But what we had there was a lot of interveners that were other parties, interested parties with cases which related to mine, and that included the HIV and AIDS Society and the BC Civil Liberties Society, and a few more. Sante Cannabis was another intervener. They introduced the story of the McKnights.
Yeah.
Liam McKnight and his use of cannabis for seizures, and this cannabis oil specifically. And so there were a lot of arguments added at that level, and we had a lot more lawyers there who were volunteers from these different organizations. And it really helped to drive it home, as the final score in the Supreme Court of Canada was 7-0, and two of the judges not being there. But it was such a unanimous decision that they decided that the government should not be given any time to make changes, and that the law should be struck down at that moment, which it was, making the restriction to dried cannabis obsolete, so that until the government did put together their little exemption scheme and are now considering writing cannabis edibles and extracts into new regulations, that there really was no law for a little while there. The government.
Alicia, it was it's too bad you're so far out west there, because being here in Ontario, I was able to go up to the case there to see Kirk, and get to meet Owen in person finally after all those years, and be a witness to all this. And I can tell you, it was a real thrill to sit there and watch Kurt and the lawyers, say everything. And the questions that were coming back from the judges, it just gave everybody a feeling in there that geez, he's going to win this thing. He's going to win this thing. And then when it was all over and the judges got up and left, there was a huge round of applause in the courtroom. And yeah, it was a day of that felt real good. And I was just there as a witness, never mind being involved in the case, like Owen and everybody else.
There were people.
That's amazing.
There were people vaporizing in the courtroom.
Yeah, I did see that.
It was really a great turnout. There was a bus that came, brought people. It was the Dab Express or something, Extract Express.
Extract Express. That was Justin Louses arranged that through with Jason and everybody from Cannabis Canada. He arranged that bus and from Toronto, and had a pack full of people, and there was people that came from everywhere, and we had to use an overflow room to accommodate everybody. Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing, because at the beginning of the trial, that we really I didn't know. Not many people knew about about much of what we had at the end of it. That the oil for the children, that really blew up during the course of the trial. We started hearing from Sanjay Gupta and hearing about all these families that benefit from the oil. And also this phenomena of making concentrates has exploded during that time. Shatters and waxes and rosins. And these kinds of things have now become one of the more popular items that you might find around. So it's really felt like part of this movement where we get to the end there and this bass load of people doing dabs.
Yes, it was. It was a bus full. So
awesome.
Yeah, so it was a real good. It was a real good day. I got to meet some. I know myself. I'm sure you're the same way. You got to meet some advocates that you probably had talked to for a long time online, but never actually got to meet in person.
That's right. I got to meet Russell Barr and his wife, which was very, very pleasing.
Yeah.
And a lot yourself and a lot of awesome people I got to meet. We had the Legion in Ottawa the night before.
Correct.
And they were very hospitable to the cannabis crowd, which was great.
Very, very hospitable, and I gotta say, it's gotta be the first time I ever vaporized at a Legion. And I've seen it in other spots since then. They've done it again since then, and no smoking, but they allowed vaporization, which was good.
That was awesome.
Yes, it was. It was a good time. I was gonna say we'll have to do it again, but I don't think you want to go through a court case that long. And Alicia, you're involved in the law end of things. How would you like to do a court case that went on for 6 years?
The question that just crossed my mind was, what did it cost him to go through that court process for 6 years and do all of the steps and everything that occurred? That makes me really curious.
The financial costs exceeded $140,000.
Oh my God.
That's a lot of cookies, man.
That is, yes, the appropriate response. We did a lot of fundraising. We had parties, like dance parties. We had barbecues. We had art auctions. And we had an online GoFundMe thing going. Say Redbeard, he created a Cookie Monster bong that sold for a few grand. The, what do they call it? Concentrate Opens. That was a local group that held events where they competed amongst extract producers, and they donated quite a lot of money as well. And so the bulk of the funds that paid for it came from the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and the membership there. There was a donation, but it also came through the sale of the products. And so we were able to gradually pay that off over the 6 years. So it was a great achievement, like that and above and beyond all of our legal acrobatics, the fundraising. Having to pay that much money is almost just a punishment in itself. Even being innocent and having all the charges expunged, and then helping inform and improve the law for future generations. So yeah, the financial part is definitely one sore point in the long run.
Well, but I applaud you for sticking it out and taking that chance, right? Because without you, we wouldn't have that legal entitlement to edibles. So kudos, that's something that I guess was meant to be on your path to fight and to win, right? I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I really felt like it was just part of a greater movement, really part of leading the world like we are, and being in BC and on the coast here, where it's really starting to, really has in the last 5 years gone crazy in popularity. Everybody's coming out with it, so it feels great to have played my part.
I'm sure it does.
I'm still playing a part.
Well, yeah, it's right. It's all part of it, and it was your case that it made so much sense. Why make people they're going on about the negatives about smoking, but then you don't legally allow them to eat it, as another product. That's it didn't make sense. So it was good to see that the courts supported that, and it's been the courts all the way along that have been supporting. Well, in your case, it wasn't the patient, but it still benefited the patients. So it was good to see, all the way along the courts have been there for the patients. And, I'm sure as before the show will get done, we'll talk about the legalization issue. And I'm sure the court's going to come along afterwards and have to improve things there as well.
It's likely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Alicia, we got about 3 minutes until we go to break. Did you want to sing a song?
Sure.
No.
Only kidding, of course.
Yes, that's right.
I guess I would like to ask Owen, what's his favorite method of ingestion?
Well, I do personally like oral ingestion. Drinks, I like a hot drink. I really like a hot drink, creamy, hot, tasty chai with cannabis infused is a very pleasant way to consume it. But then you're going to pair that with some tasty edible of some kind. Like there's no limit to what you can do with infused cannabis. But I like shortbreads. Shortbreads are delicious. So hot chocolate and shortbreads, because it's winter time, so those are kind of on my mind anyway.
Yeah, but you don't have any snow out there, do you?
No snow, just lots of rain.
Lots of rain.
Lots of rain.
You're not still cutting the lawn or anything, though, right?
I personally, I like the effects of edible cannabis. They last longer, and I get a deeper physical relief for my muscles and joints. Just feels very pleasant to wake up from a cannabis sleep.
It's nice not to have any hangover as you do with the alcohol after you've consumed the night before. And I know myself, I have to agree with you. When you eat, and it helps so much better with the muscles and the joints.
It's the opposite of a hangover. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
Doing it and you're waking up feeling like 10 times better than you did.
Yeah. And, some people, from my experience talking with people, is, they'll say, oh, I ate that before I went to bed and I didn't feel anything. Well, how'd you sleep? Oh, I slept great. Well, there you go. Because they, have had problems sleeping due to pain issues or whatever. And then for them to be able to sleep through the night, that's all they were looking for, right?
Mm-hmm. Edible cannabis also offers some more varied effects. I feel that it can take a little further if exploring your own mind and your own thoughts and dreams and whatnot in your privacy of your own home. If you enjoy doing that with cannabis smoked, I think you'll enjoy edible cannabis, as it can take you even further in that direction.
That's it.
And alter perception a little bit more, I think, than what people would generally achieve from inhaling it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, guys, it's break time. Time for a commercial break. And to hear a little bit more of the Hicks and their song, Good Old BC Smoke. And then when we get back, Alicia and I will continue our conversation with you, Owen. And I'm sure we may just change gears. Going to switch over to something else after the break. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show. We are here at lifestyleradio.net.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Where the potheads stash the greatest hash with buds they do grind. They roll 'em fat like baseball bats for 20 all the time. They grow like trees with bumblebees. They smoke 'em with a burning flame. So crystal white, it's dynamite, the BC Mary Jane. Oh, the good old BC smoke is the best smoke you can toke. And the best smoke you can smoke is the good old BC smoke. Oh, the good old BC smoke.
Man, have you been to Cannadays yet? Cannadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Cannadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Cannadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Cannadays. Have your say without saying a word. Cannadays.ca.
Hi, this is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on lifestyleradio.ca.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Last joint in the bag. Oh, take me where the potheads go and the weed, it smells like skunk. And have a treat, made to eat, a butter made from bunk. Oh, spark a bowl and torch the knives, take that doobie down. Roll a blunt of BC skunk, 'cause it's the best bud ever found. Oh, the good old BC smoke is the best smoke you can toke, and the best smoke you can toke.
Hey, we're back. We are back, and we are live as always. LifestyleRadio.ca. Check us out there. And you can also catch us live at Spreaker. Tonight, we featured the music of the Hicks. They're from British Columbia. That's where Owen is. And we got to hear some of good old BC Smoke. If you'd like to hear the whole song or any of the other music, I can tell you, you can find them on YouTube. That's where I found them. Today on the show, we've got our guest, Owen Smith, as well as our joint host, Alicia Yashcheshen. Okay, Owen and Alicia, so far we've been talking a lot about Owen's winning victory at the Supreme Court of Canada. And Owen does a lot more than just go to court, don't you, Owen?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Alicia, I gotta hand the reins over to you again so you can start off with the questions.
Okay, so I must ask about Cannabis Digest. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Absolutely. Cannabis Digest has been providing education and news and information for over 12 years. Al has been a contributor, written a bunch of great articles for us.
Thank you.
We produced 52 quarterly journals and printed them and sent them out across the country. We have artists that we consistently work with that do great cover art that you can color in, and also our website is cannabisdigest.ca. Has a lot of blogs that we've been putting up there since 2013 that cover all kinds of stuff. We have our editor Judith Stamps, who writes very detailed, clear, political and scientific articles. And we have doctors from the United States, like Dr. David Allen, who's contributed a number of fascinating scientific articles, medical articles, to our archives. And so we're continuing to work, and we're looking to expand and transform somewhat for the new cannabis environment that's being created in Canada. We'd like to be able to reach more people. We'd like our offerings, our print offerings, to be a little bit more advanced, and we bring in some color and kind of organize it a little bit further and take the work that we've built over the last decade or so and bring it into the legal cannabis environment to continue to help inform new cannabis users and us who have been doing it for a while about all kinds of stuff, whether it's a new kind of vaporizer or this kind of extract or that new dispensary or what's happening in towns across the country. We like to be able to help inform and help make the most out of legalization in whatever forms that are carved out.
That's awesome. And so I guess what's your take on these new monopolies that governments are trying to create when it comes to dispensaries and who can sell cannabis in the alleged legalization model?
Well, I thought it, I think most of us have been predicting that kind of pressure. The idea of having total control, government control, and the monopolization, forcing out all of the existing players, people who've been doing great things. But already, the Supreme Court of Canada has seen arguments from cannabis culture that address monopolization of cannabis by the provincial governments. So even before the legislation has been laid down, there are potentially powerful rulings still to come that will inform how the government can operate in provincial governments, whether they can have monopolies over these products. So I know there's a concern there, and so I was pleasantly surprised to see the Emery's there bring the arguments to the Supreme Court of Canada.
Are they not also waiting on one that has to do with the alcohol end of things as well for going across the provincial borders?
That's correct. They were interveners, like I was mentioning earlier in my case. When you get to the Supreme Court of Canada, those who have arguments which relate. So in this case, the transport of alcohol across provincial borders relates to provincial alcohol monopolies, which then we could argue applies to the monopolization of other products that are similar, such as cannabis. And
it'll be interesting. See what happens.
Indeed.
Yeah, go ahead, Alicia.
So I guess for you, you kind of touched on legalization, but what could make it better? Like, what would be the perfect legalization to you?
Well, I think the most value that I will had out of being involved with cannabis is the social and the human value that has come from this work. I know from working, none of us have got wealthy doing that. Obviously, with the big bill from the court and all that, it's been incredibly difficult in that regard. But really, my life has been improved and in lots of ways just by being able to have a community of people who have shared in what has been a bit of a crusade to overturn this law. And I'd like to see that benefit the community being able to gather at places like the dispensaries that we open and share in their love for this plant and share in how this plant makes them more creative in a number of variety of ways. And I'd like to see the benefits of the cannabis culture really start to feed into the rest of the aspects of society. But of course, that relies on access being reasonable to general public, and also on the ability to have spaces to do like vapor lounges and social clubs to do that kind of communicating and sharing amongst ourselves, so that we can work together on new and brilliant projects. Say, recently I've been spending some time at Victoria's only vapor lounge. It's called Terp City on Douglas Street, 1412 Douglas Street. If you're in Victoria, head down there and experience a nice, relaxing, comfortable, clean cannabis lounge with all the amenities that you might need to dab or hit the bong or roll something up, and enjoy the company that you'll find there, because I spent a couple nights there a week over the last few months, and I met some fantastic people who are engaged in business, cannabis business ideas, which you'd imagine these things, and I imagine that there would be somebody developing an app that helped to organize the delivery of cannabis to people in need. But having meet the small group that are working on that together, it's great to feel that excitement, share in that general energy, and just help to encourage them, and then in turn tell them about the Cannabis Digest and how we at the Cannabis Digest can help write articles that talk about the services and the positive qualities of people's services, and publish them and spread that around. So it's nice to be embedded in this cannabis community with the creative, and it being such an exciting time for us all. So much potential that only 10 years ago we wouldn't have dreamed possible. That's what I hope is legalization brings community and people working together. That's a big question.
Yeah. Now, Owen, you mentioned you're at Terp City, the Vapor Lounge. Alicia and I were talking at the very beginning of the show about here in Ontario when they're talking about legalizing and regulating vapor lounges. Are you hearing anything about that out in British Columbia?
Well, there's been a process here in Victoria with the city council in rezoning and licensing cannabis-related businesses. One of their initial lines that they drew was for vapor lounges. They said no vapor lounges, and they said no on-site consumption. And so that was challenged by a number of folks, including the Green Ceiling, who opened a vapor lounge, a very nice vapor lounge. And the arguments were brought to City Council, but the City Council held firm and handed out a lot of tickets. And bylaw officers came around handing out tickets, which amounted to thousands of dollars, I understand. But as time progressed, some of the city councillors started to echo the arguments that were brought to them, that the people need somewhere to be, that they can't be forced onto the street if their residence doesn't permit cannabis use. And of course, this applies to medical patients as well. You can think of somebody in a wheelchair having to scoot outside and underneath some kind of eave on the corner of the street to use their cannabis in the rain. I mean, it's just very uncivilized. And so they started to speak positively about it. And more recently, although the Green Ceiling has closed, Terp City has been given some leeway from the city. And these arguments have been carried forth by these councillors from Victoria City Council to the province, so that while the province is currently figuring out what rules to put in place here in British Columbia. They are being informed somewhat through these councillors that vapor lounges would be a positive inclusion in those regulations. So it's been like you can see the advocacy on the ground and the work of people making their point to the city council has carried through to the higher levels of government, and now we hear, and you were talking about earlier, Ontario government considering vapor lounge licenses.
Yeah.
So I wrote an article for the Cannabis Digest in the summer where I talk about the many benefits of allowing vaporizing and how it should relieve a lot of the concerns that some people have around legalization, increasing the amount of smoke consumed. But the very core of my arguments for the constitutionality of cannabis resin was that consumption is unnecessary, and so we should encourage and make available alternatives such as vaporizing and extracts for that purpose.
Awesome. And so I guess in the future, what are you foreseeing, like legalistically, when it comes to like medical and recreation? Like, what are we going to see there? What do you foresee?
Well, you never know what the governments will do, considering that what we uncovered was just what they made. It's just all made up, and oftentimes it's not perfect, and it needs to be changed. But what I would like to see happen would be some of the models that they've been considering in dispensaries here, which involve subsidizing medical cannabis patients, those who really need these products, through the costs that people pay who don't have those medical issues. And it's a very welcome idea. People I've talked to would very much appreciate the help in getting their medicine, and those who enjoy cannabis regularly are very happy that they can contribute to those people's improvement through purchasing cannabis. So you can see how some of the arguments of the government, such as purchasing cannabis from a dispensary, is funding organized crime. Well, in some cases, it's the complete opposite. And another good example of this is the Cannabis Substitution Project, where dispensaries and edibles producers are donating from their supply cannabis products for people who are suffering from opiate addiction and withdrawal. And they use cannabis to help them get off those powerful pain products, and as there's such a dangerous epidemic of death through fentanyl being found in all kinds of street drugs, having the community here, which you might call an organized community of criminals, although the law has just been shifting. We are really working hard to help those most vulnerable in our society, the people who we see out there on the street, and it's a very positive project. So,
nice. Yeah, is that the one that Neil Magnuson is doing?
That's correct. And there's a chapter here in Victoria as well. And also in Colorado, I was recently contacted by a doctor there and a group working together to provide cannabis products in a similar vein. So it is the opiate epidemic is across North America, very devastating to a lot of communities. So this could really provide a bit of a surprising response solution to some of those problems if it's embraced widely.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is. It is. It's good to see the communities reaching out, the cannabis community reaching out to help people with these other issues as well. So, all right, we got about 3 more minutes, Alicia, before we gotta get to the shout out part.
Nice.
Yeah, you got a short question? What do you think? Or maybe we could get Owen's opinion on. Didn't you guys just have some market shut down out there in British Columbia? Was it Vancouver? I think Robson Square. Robson Square.
Yeah, they've been running the cannabis market there pretty regularly, and I think that from time to time the police will make themselves known, but they're not. I think Neil is part of that. They're not budging. That they'll continue to return and have open cannabis markets there. It's an expansion on the ground that they broke at 420. So it's right by the art museum.
Right, the art gallery and that. Yeah, exactly.
Vancouver is just really unique in that way. They have such a strong cannabis community. Victoria has one growing, but Vancouver is special.
I saw something too online about the Victoria Council was starting to go after landlords of dispensaries that don't have the license through the city.
That's right. I read that as well. It seems that the city has had not a lot of luck with compliance from dispensaries which haven't reached the approval from the city. Some of them have closed down, but many are disputing the fines and are taking the city to court.
Right.
The city has moved the goalposts a little bit during the process, introducing an additional 200 meters of space that dispensaries need to be away from each other or from schools. Right. And so it's an ongoing process. I think the city wants to keep putting pressure on these businesses that were really opening up at a rapid rate before the city started to address it. So I think they'll continue to do that. But we'll see how it goes with the landlords.
Yeah. That's the same tactic they used in Toronto. They went after the landlords. So. All right, Owen and Alicia, we're down to those last 5 minutes of the program. And this is usually when we do our shout out. I'll take a turn. So, Owen, you got a person, place, thing, website, anything like that you can give our listeners?
Well, I'll drop cannabisdigest.ca. Check out for information. Also, drop the Terp City, and you can find all the addresses to that at terpcity.ca. And I'll also give big love to Abby Roach and Lisa Campbell, who I just saw here. They're from out east, some pioneers in the cannabis movement, and they visited. We had sat down at Terp City last week, the Vapor Lounge, and that was very nice to share in some of the experiences from what's coming from Ontario.
Yeah, and Abby's been big on this lounge issue as well, big time. So. Alicia.
Neat. Well, of course, I would like to thank Owen Smith for coming on the radio show, and I would like to send a big kudos to him for sticking it out and changing the law for the benefit of every Canadian. So thank you very much, and much love to everyone at Pace.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, as you know, Alicia, Owen doesn't know this, but I do the radio show from the front window here at Canada Days, It's a head shop here in downtown Campbellford. And Wayne just posted today that he is growing. He is on the move. He has a new location. He's not going far, though. He's just going right next door. But his store space will double in size. And I may have a new window. Or maybe I'll have a couch to sit on next time.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's good to see that. Wayne's worked hard. And it's good to see that he's able to grow.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's see. Next, another thing I wanted to mention too about Canada Days. I had a message sent to me just before airtime. A friend of mine, Anya Ganja. I don't know whether you guys have Anya Ganja on your Instagram or not, but she posted a picture of a pendant that she produced, that she made herself, with a mushroom inside of it. And she says the first person to walk into the store to say that they saw the post on Instagram is more than welcome to have it. She's giving it away for free. So any listeners, if you're in the area, stop in sometime. Maybe not tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, and talk to Wayne about getting this pendant. So you got to thank Anya Ganja for that. I told her I mentioned it tonight. So there we go.
Perfect.
Okay. Yes. I have a friend locally who may just be really interested in that. Okay. You can find Pace on Twitter at Pace Radio. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, where we're Pace Radio Show. And you can find us online at pace-online.ca. And while you're there, send us a message. I still got lots of free stuff, Treating Yourself magazines stuff that I'm giving away. So give me a shout from there. Thank yous go to our sponsors, the helpful folks at CC Nexus. They are found at ccnexus.global, and they are Canada's largest cannabis seed bank. So give them a shout. Also, big thanks to Al Rapp, making sure that we get to the air every week. And he's on the move, so he's coming up with new methods all the time. Also, big thank you to Owen. Owen, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's great to be talking to you again. It's been, like I said at the beginning of the show, it's been 2 years.
Thank you, guys. It's been a real pleasure being back on the show.
Yeah, we'll have to have you again in the future. We won't wait 2 years before we give you a buzz.
All right.
All right. And to you, Alicia, for everything you do for the program and finding guests and letting everybody know where we're at. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
And always a big thank you to our listeners for tuning into the program. And we know what the listeners mean, and we really appreciate them. Thank you, and good night.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.